You are listening to Todd Talks from the Truett Church Network. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy.
Welcome to Todd Talks, where my guest today is Brad Hill. Brad serves as Chief Solutions Officer for GLOO. Brad is a Baylor graduate, and we've had Brad at Truett today. He's spoken in chapel. We've had a remarkable lunch. He's met with ministers and pastors and community leaders, and we're so delighted that Brad is back to Baylor, back on campus. Welcome to Baylor. Welcome to Todd Talks, Brad.
Fun to be back, Todd. Thanks for having me.
So glad you're here. So when I introduce you as Chief Solutions Officer for GLOO, that's a mouthful, and GLOO is spelled G-L-O-O. So if you were to say to someone who has no knowledge of GLOO, what is it and what do you do there, how would you respond?
Yes, well, thanks for spelling it. A lot of folks need that help along the way, no doubt. So we are a technology platform company, and we exist to really help the whole church get better connected. So that exhibits itself in a myriad of ways, but it's really based in this idea, this premise that we've uncovered that there's a lot of disconnection in the church today, whether we want to talk about a local church, finding resources, people, funding, even data, but also other players in the faith community, publishers, seminaries, technology providers, and a whole litany of folks in between. So at GLOO, we work with a number of churches across the U.S., about 85,000. We work with thousands of different ministries, and we love to be in small, close-in environments, but also large convenings, looking for more ways that we can help all of the church get better connected to each other.
Amazing platform, amazing ministry. So you have suggested today that GLOO is a platform. Talk more about that.
Yes, thanks for bringing that up. It's a big word for us. It's arguably kind of an overused word in business and even in technology, in social media influencers. We hear that word all the time. We use it very purposefully. A platform in the truest sense is something that helps people connect or helps producers and consumers exchange. The classic examples we always talk about would be things we all know, like Uber or Airbnb. Drivers and riders, hosts and guests, they kind of understand now how to connect, but we don't think about the underlying infrastructures that were there to make it possible. And a platform is that. We contend that within the faith community, there's room for platforms to connect, and actually every local church itself is, in a way, a platform to connect people to each other, people to resources, and hopefully connect people from our communities into the gospel message through the work of our church. So platform is an important word for us, and it drives a lot of how we build the tools and the infrastructures that we do.
Remarkable. Brad, earlier in a conversation that we were having with a group of ministers, you were suggesting at the very core of church life lay what?
So yeah, there's an important business principle, although I think it's a biblical principle of how God's designed us to grow and to disciple. We call it a core interaction, and put simply, we're made to help others grow. We are, in our words, we would say each of us has inside of us some God-given passion and gift and ability to champion the growth of another person. Every parent that may be watching can somehow relate to that. Although honestly, a lot of days parenting might be harder than it feels, productive. But nonetheless, parents are champions of growth. But in the kingdom, we see pastors, small group leaders, coaches, counselors, et cetera, all exhibiting this pattern. And what we also notice is that we all switch. Sometimes I might be leading a men's ministry. That's me kind of championing the growth of others. But I might turn right around and switch and sit under a counselor or another small group. And so as we think about tools, apps, content, et cetera, we have to recognize that God in his beautiful design has allowed us to simultaneously be sort of the comforted and the comforter, depending on the context where we find ourselves.
That's so powerful. I once heard it said that in life, especially in the Christian life, everyone needs a mentor and everyone needs a ministry. Someone pouring into you, something in which to pour into.
That's right. We agree, and I mean, put another way, we've shared that no one is at their true God-given potential when they're simply consuming. We're made to contribute. We all have something to give, which is a note of encouragement, by the way, to folks who may feel that they're going through a valley, they're going through a season, that every one of us has something to contribute. And we think that churches often can really be well served by actively looking for how do we draw out of the people in our pews what it is that they could contribute. How do we find the passion in the pews, as some have said, so that we can ignite that ability in them to serve and, again, be a platform. It's really not our job as church organizations to do all the heavy lifting. Instead, how do we help know and then match people to where they're meant to serve?
Facilitate. I'm reminded of that text in Ephesians 4, equipping the saints for the work of ministry, that folks may grow into maturity.
That's right. That's right. And in fact, I love that passage. Often when we're describing GLOO as a company, I reach for the very end of that passage where this little phrase appears that says, "and every supporting ligament."
Yes.
And in a sense, GLOO sees a calling on our company to be that connective tissue or that ligament. It's not always fun or exciting to be one of the lines between the boxes. Everybody wants to be the boxes if we were to whiteboard out the faith ecosystem. So we feel called to be the lines and to connect so that we can, as we say, release the collective might of the church as we see in Ephesians 4 and 1 Corinthians and many other passages.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, the body analogy that Paul employs in 1 Corinthians 12.
That's right.
And not everyone can be an eye, not everyone can be an ear, not everyone can be a nose, but taken together on the whole, we need the whole body.
And this is an important concept because I think in many sectors today, when I sit with pastors and leaders, they may personally feel gifted to be an eye, an ear, or a right arm or something. But there's also maybe a unfounded pressure on pastors to figure out all the other parts and develop or invent or recreate things inside the four walls of the church. Meanwhile, out there, connected wherever we look, there might be ears and noses and other parts of the body in God's infinite wisdom He's placed available. But for sometimes reasons of just not knowing they're out there, other times for reasons of maybe having some trust gaps or structural inhibitors, we don't connect. So we see churches reinventing everything from content to websites and apps to compensation models. And you could just list any aspect of the church. Someone's probably figured it out. And as a pastor, what do you uniquely feel called to, and how might you reach for others who can fill those gaps that aren't your part of the body to fill?
So we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we sure do enjoy it.
Yeah, that's right. Gives us at least a momentary pleasure that we're doing something useful. That's right.
So we've been talking about GLOO. How did GLOO come to be in the first place?
Well, GLOO's been around about 15 years, and we have a really interesting origin story, again, as a tech company, but founded by strong believers in faith that were interested in what churches and ministries need underneath them that they're not getting. Some of this actually originated through a family office, kind of a grant-making organization that kept fielding the same requests over and over. Many ministries and some churches came for funding for technology. And they said, we think that what we need is to build an app. Would you give us a grant? Or we think what we need is to build a database, on and on. And so enough of these came in a row that you kind of step back and look at this pattern and say, it seems like we could either keep spending money one app, one website at a time, or maybe what we could think about is creating some shared infrastructure that everyone can benefit from. And an interesting thing happens when you do shared or sort of a collective infrastructure. There's a principle called network effect. So when, back to Uber, like if I give a rating to an Uber driver, that rating then is valuable to every other rider that may come across that driver. In other words, my participation benefits the whole. When a church designs its own kids content, or a communications pastor builds their own app from scratch, that services exactly one church. But when we can contribute to the whole, or when we build shared structure, we get the value of collective impact, we get the value of improvement, and as one of my colleagues like to say, we get to avoid paying the dumb tax that others maybe have already figured out what not to do, and we get to focus on what actually works. So GLOO is really looking to come underneath a very broad set of churches and ministries and networks and build that shared infrastructure at a large scale that hopefully connects us better and gets everybody back to what they're called to in ministry. And we do that through, we have paid products for churches, we have a lot of free things, and we serve some of the largest ministries you would know, and denominations and everybody in between, trying to get them better connecting and exchanging with each other.
So the idea is that a rising tide will aid all ships.
That's right.
So how would folks connect with GLOO? I mean, what is the pathway? What is the portal for congregations, organizations that might like to access some of these resources?
Yes. Well, the simplest front door to GLOO is our website. So GLOO, and as you said, GLOO, it's gloo.us is the website. That's where you can kind of get a little bit of a surface learning of what's there. There's an enormous amount of things you can explore freely on that website and inside the app. We also serve, as I mentioned earlier, network leaders. So we have special, for example, data dashboards that help a denomination or a city leader see the big picture of what's going on with their churches. One of the very practical things we do for networks and churches is provide them with texting capabilities. Believe it or not, this might shock you, Todd. So no one reads email anymore. We still rely on it, and sometimes require it for work. But generally in the public, open and click-through rates on emails have dropped well below 40% or worse. So if you're a church out there trying to get your message out, I'm just telling you, email is probably not it. What we find, though, is texting is the most both intimate but also effective way to communicate, whether it's one at a time prayer or interaction or broadcast from an entire network. And so for that reason, we've had donors come underneath the platform and say, we think every church needs to have this tool. So for that reason, then any church can avail themselves of free, unlimited texting on GLOO, get their own number, use it for certainly announcements or broadcast things, but we actually encourage more prayer, discipleship, one-on-one connection through texting, and the results we see are outstanding. So that's actually one of the top reasons churches find their way to GLOO in the first place, is for the texting, the communications, and then they discover a whole wealth of other things they can do.
So that's a front door.
That's right.
And these resources are available to all.
That's right.
That the company has made available.
So far, we've had, I think, north of 2 billion text messages exchanged on our platform. Everything from the local church sending out prayer prompts or 30 days, devotionals, to very large Latino Christian concerts that broadcast the gospel out hundreds and thousands at a time. Campus revivals like we saw at Asbury or other places have used these texting tools to better connect and then follow up with people. So it's beautiful to see what can happen when we have the right tools and we know how to use them.
It's just mind-boggling. So, Brad, GLOO is obviously multidimensional. I'm wondering if you could kind of highlight a few things that GLOO is up to at present.
Yes. No, thank you for that. We're always up to something. I would highlight two that we're quite excited about. One is coming this next year in 2025 as we sit and record in late 24. We are embarking on a large initiative together with the Barna Group and a few others. It's called the State of the Church 2025. The basic idea is we believe it's time for the whole body, the whole church, to consider a common way of measuring our people as well as the health of our churches. So we've centered on a very well vetted set of measurements. It's called the 7 dimensions of human flourishing, and then the 15 dimensions of church thriving. The state of the church is going to be a vehicle to introduce that to a broader set of pastors. We're going to combine that with a very high quality body of new research so we can all see, in a sense, on the macro, how are we doing as a church, primarily in North America? But then every pastor is equipped with something I call the state of your church. It's one thing to read research and to see trends, but it's quite different when you can see how that applies in your own context. So we are prayerful that as many as 75 to 100,000 churches next year will adopt these measurements and even do a simple assessment, a pulse of their people to understand where they are. So state of the church, we're excited about. The other I would highlight is the work that GLOO is doing around AI in the church.
Yes.
This is a fast-growing area, very exciting. We're learning a lot about not just the technology itself, but how pastors and leaders approach AI, where they're excited, where they're fearful, and where they're not sure. And it's changing. It's a dynamic picture, as you might imagine. And, Todd, I would say the church has a complicated history with technology when it's new. This goes back to the Gutenberg press.
Absolutely.
There were German Benedictine monks who decried this invention as the work of Satan. And so going all the way back to then, we've always had a little bit of a mixed reaction to new technology. So broadcast TV, radio, the internet, and now AI, no different. But we also like to say that God is not surprised by AI. And so our endeavor is to create redemptive, thoughtful avenues for every church leader to explore what this massive cultural and technology upheaval means, and then potentially use it and adopt it in ways that you're comfortable. We know that some will rush in quickly, others may sit back for a while. So we want to create good discussion, we want to create good structures, and we are building significant tools and structures to help the whole church and the church technology industry bring AI thoughtfully and redemptively to the church. And so we've done a good bit of work in the last 2 years on that front, and we'll be making some big announcements next year on the same.
Amazing. So always this balance and this tension between the medium and the message.
That's right. Yes, I mean, AI, we think of it as a technology, and it is a medium, you're right, or a modality.
Yeah.
But it is far deeper than that. Friend of mine astutely pointed out, this may be the first time we use the phrase imago Dei, that we're made in the image of.
Yeah.
But the created has now created something that can create.
Yeah.
We haven't seen that before, right? I mean, Google is one thing, gives you search results, but up until now, Google hasn't then told me what to search for or suggested what to do about it. I love going back to Proverbs, where we see these 3 words, knowledge, understanding, and wisdom, over and over again in that pattern.
Yes.
Google, in a sense, kind of gave us this vast bucket of knowledge. Like, it just kind of collected the whole internet into one. I don't know about you, when you search, it's like you have 10 billion results. That's amazing, but also kind of overwhelming.
Yes.
That's a lot of knowledge.
Yes.
Now with AI, technology is beginning to craft some understanding. Like, how do I knit this together in patterns that make sense and transcend language? And there's some big implications for that. I take heart, though, in the fact that God ultimately endowed only His created with wisdom.
Yes.
And I think it's also incumbent on pastors and leaders of faith to really lean into the importance of discernment in an age of AI.
Yes.
It's getting harder to spot the fake, whether it's photos or term papers or whatever.
Yeah. Or sermons.
Or sermons. Thank you. That's right. And so discernment, skillful handling.
Yeah.
And I think the more that our people in our churches understand and deeply can just sit in the Word and reckon. A friend of mine said, people who examine counterfeit dollar bills, the way they train is they look at the real ones.
Yeah.
They don't look at the fakes.
Yeah.
And the more they understand what a real dollar bill looks like, it's easy to spot a fake. So to me, that's an interesting question and challenge for our churches.
Yeah.
How much are we teaching the word?
Yeah.
If we do that, I feel like we're going to be doing well and just fine.
And this raises the largest questions that we can ask. I mean, what does it mean to be human?
Right.
Right.
That's right.
What does virtue, what does truth mean?
These are big questions. That's right. And it transcends, again, this is not just a technology question. I mean, nothing you just asked has anything to do with large language models or GPTs or whatever. Yeah, so I think it really is a fascinating time. And to think about my kids and generations coming up, they won't just be digital natives, but they'll be AI natives. And their understanding, their understanding of purpose and work. That's another whole discipline of discussion right now, is the future of work.
Yes.
And AI and purpose. And so I don't have all the answers. I don't think anybody does. This is moving quickly.
Yeah.
But also, back to our statement, God is not surprised.
Right.
And people of faith, I think, can be very thoughtful. And we have an opportunity, Todd, I think this round, for the church to lead.
Yes.
We're very optimistic, and we're seeing some early, really encouraging signs that theologians, Christians in tech, and others are really leaning hard into this new advancement and using it for good and using it to serve the advancement of the kingdom.
I love how you put it, leaning hard into it, not burying our heads in sand.
That's right.
But saying, as Christians, how can we move into this area of exploration, asking large questions and seeking God for wisdom?
That's right. We did, I'll share just one quick stat. We've been doing regular research on AI in the church, and we asked congregants actually what they want from their pastor when it comes to this burgeoning area of AI. What was reassuring to me is that most congregants are not expecting you as a pastor to be an expert in the technology. You don't have to brush up on the acronyms or understand how it's all put together. They are, however, interested in help and guidance, knowing how to navigate, because AI is creating real issues in life.
Yes.
Parents are navigating what happens when my kid gets accused of cheating with ChatGPT. And I don't think my kid did, but how do I deal with that? Or do I allow the use of AI-generated imagery in my work as a creator? And so our congregants are hungry for that guidance. They're not sure if they expect it from their pastor, but they aren't against it.
Right.
So in general, I see an opportunity there as a leader, as a pastor. I think there's an incredible teaching, preaching series here. I think that there's opportunity to just help people think well, whether it's this technology or whatever comes after it, of how do we then live in this age when everyone around us is grappling with the very same issues. How do people of faith navigate it and do so differently, being in and not of?
So in addition to the future of the church in 2025, the AI leading edge, what else may be out in front for GLOO?
Well, I'll say just precious little. We're a company, I've used that term, and we're a for-profit business serving churches, right, and ministries. And we do a good bit of work really learning about and studying the way funding works and moves through the Christian community. Of course, we all think about tithes and offerings, or here in a university setting, we may think about donors, benefactors, endowments, and the like. The truth is that there's a tremendous amount of capital that is committed for use in Christian or nonprofit context, but is not moving. And there's also another dynamic that more capital is arguably leaving the faith space than is coming in. And there's various reasons for that. So we're looking at different ways to access capital on behalf of the whole church, and also ways to get more of it moving on behalf of churches and ministries. And so we've been doing some interesting projects there. using technology to, for example, give donors more confidence that when they donate $1 to a cause, it's actually going to go to what they believe it would, and they have measurable proof back. And then next year, Lord willing, GLOO is going to be approaching a public offering on the stock market, but doing so in a very different way than you might expect, expressly and explicitly for the reason of bringing a new source of capital into the faith ecosystem that can be deployed. And so hopefully we can kind of reverse that trend and maybe see more money flowing into the church in a transparent and trustworthy way, by the way, than currently is the case moving out. So we'll have a lot more to say about that in the months to come. But yeah, we tend to kind of bite off some big challenges, which we're glad to, and we're maybe crazy, but we try.
Yeah, state of the church, AI, generosity.
Yes, right.
These are not small things. Well, Brad, I have just been so enriched by our time together, not only in chapel, not only in lunch Q&A and the time we've spent with ministers. I could talk to you all day, but I think that we probably need to try to land the plane. So I'm wondering, for all of our Baylor friends out there, you yourself are a Baylor alum. You're a legacy, third generation Baylor Bear, Sikkim.
Right.
So, I mean, I wonder, Brad, as you reflect upon your time at Baylor and now the various things that you've done subsequent to the position in which you're now in, how do you think that your time here prepared you for the work and witness that is yours?
Yeah, well, I think it's, that's been, as I've gone through the decades since graduation, I think my answer to that has probably evolved, in a positive way. I think I was really encouraged being here at Baylor I graduated in '96, to date myself, but what a great time to be on campus and a great time to be a student, and prepared me initially for vocationally and for the work I was doing in my early career. I'm more appreciative now, though, I think, for the faith foundation underneath the discipline I received. I graduated from Hankomer School of Business and spent a lot of time in Castellaw doing business and broadcasting. Picked up a lot of specific skill sets that I can still point back to. I remember econ, I remember consumer behavior class. These were formative. But really, I think beyond that, to know that God is at work in every discipline. And Baylor's work in connecting dots, maybe in some non-intuitive ways, I can better appreciate looking back now, perhaps, than I could at the time, especially now that I have 2 approaching college-age kids myself, and seeing the diversity of schools and choices that are out there. What a special place Baylor is, I think, to marry those two, and unapologetically Christian, but also focus on academics, graduate programs, research, the whole package. So really delighted to do whatever we can to give back and make sure that this institution continues to create bright lights, because it's doing a fantastic job.
Well, it's been a joy to visit with you. So grateful that you continue to serve Baylor, and thank you for coming back. Continue to work with Handcammer. You're now a part of the Baylor Alumni Network Board of Advocates. So Brad, thank you for your work. And thank each of you for tuning in to Todd Talks, where our guest today has been Brad Hill of GLOO. See you next time.